Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman. Now I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. It's here, folks. Anytime a television show can get to a number that has 3 digits in it, it's a pretty big moment for that TV show. And we got that tonight with all of our favorite Wednesday night show. You can see where I am, man. I'm in my car. It's dark out. We just finished watching an episode. You know what time it is, man. Pull up a chair. Take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in, spoiler-free, then spoiler-filled, into American Horror Story 1984, Episode 6, the 100th episode. That is the title that they gave it. And, you know, it's a fitting title, right? Like, anytime you get to episode 100, don't give it a title. Just give it, like, this is episode 100, man. It's, you know, every once in a while, you'll get, like, bands or things, and they'll just name a song a number because, you know, it originated from a number. I'm fine with that. And when you got 100 episodes in the world of American Horror Story, you certainly have some unbelievable peak moments throughout the entire series. And, you know, you want to go big. You want to do something fitting for 100. And while this episode is the season pivot setup episode, or at least the current pivot setup, this episode is setting up, you know, things to come. This was a rock solid episode for episode 100, and it started with a bang, man. The opening, the cold open before the credits get going, and we see the intro to the show, was just pure genius. Like, I'm obviously not going to spoil anything right now, but what they do to open the show with the 2 characters that we start with, it's like I was sitting there, I was like, huh, well, this is interesting. Okay. You know, and then after the cold open, you know, the episode does a really good job of establishing where everybody is, man. We by the end of the episode, we get a real sense of where everybody is. The fact that, like, this isn't, you know, a season where we're having the wool pulled over our eyes and thinking that we're watching one thing and actually getting another. And it does a good job in setting up what's to come for at least the next episode or 2. It is interesting when you see, like, the previews for next week, that it doesn't feel like this is going to be an extended pivot. This feels like it's going to be kind of short-lived and then pivot again, which I'm fine with, because I currently like where the story is, and I'm interested to see where it goes. But, you know, it gives you some good twists, some turns, and overall, I thought this was a solid episode. It maybe could have been a little bit bigger, you know, for 100, but like I said, I think the characters that they're playing with in this episode, and the things that they're doing were just extremely enjoyable to watch. And you were like, as certain things were starting to unfold, you're like, oh man, like, this is where we might go. And so far, so good. I think through 6 episodes, it's been a solid season. And in that pivot episode, we're not pivoting to something that's gonna get me infuriated or extremely upset. At least it seems that we're pivoting within the story and keeping it cohesive with what's going on. So there you go, man. Those are all my spoiler-free thoughts on AHS 1984, Episode 6, the 100th episode. Now, if you haven't watched the 100th episode and you were here to see what I was thinking early, this is your time to leave. Exit stage left, please. For those that are left now, that you've watched the episode, now comes the fun stuff, man. We can dive in to the episode proper and talk about the things that were really making this episode work. What twists and turns we got that kind of made this one go, all right, man, like, for an 100th episode, I'm still happy. You're not losing me yet. And there have been seasons recently where the second half of the year, things kind of fall apart. Right now, I like where we're at. And I like that we start with the last 2 guys we saw. I referenced that we were 2 characters for the cold open. We are with, of course, Night Stalker and Mr. Jingles, and we are picking up in 1985. They've been together now for a year, and you know, like, I'm sitting there, I'm kind of watching what's going on. I'm like, 85. Why are we jumping to 85? Was that when everything went down? So obviously you pull it up, and Night Stalker did all of his, you know, his murder spree happened in LA during 1985. So that's where we're picking up, and we kind of pick up where we're at, like, this motel or hotel, really loud rock music is playing, and there's a woman who's trying to sleep like one or two doors down. So she gets up, goes over, and who's in there but Night Stalker. He pulls her and kills her, and then has this conversation with Mr. Jingles. And it's such a well written open, man. Like the conversation that they have kind of shows you that like Jingles is like, you're just like recklessly murdering people, which is what Ramirez did in real life. It was kind of random, reckless home invasions. And you can see not necessarily remorse, but like this is eating Jingles, because Jingles now knows that he was innocent from the get-go, and that he only recently started actually killing people, and it's not something that sits well with him. But when Satan saves your life, you gotta serve the dude with the horns. And you see them go about and kill two more people in like this quick little montage, and then they kind of stop outside a grocery store, and Night Stalker goes in to get like beers or whatever. And this was, I thought, the most clever part about the scene. It's the music that's in the car. One, Night Stalker is playing, the type of rock music he likes. It's not Billy Idol, but rather Black Sabbath's Paranoid, which we'll get to in a moment. And the minute he gets out of the car, Jingles flips it and goes to REO's Speedwagon. Can't Fight This Feeling. And it's such the music so matches both characters so well. You're just like, oh man, like that's a clever little thing. But then pay attention to the titles. Paranoid, which is something that the Night Stalker should probably be after the conversation he has where, Mr. Jingles in the hotel, like, wanted to get out. He was like, I'm not about this. And he's like, you can't leave. So, when you hear something like that, paranoid is what he should be. And when the minute the cleverness kicked in was when Can't Fight This Feeling is kind of kicking into the Can't Fight This Feeling, and Jingles gets up outside, sees a newspaper with a picture of Ramirez right on it, and you're like, oh man. And immediately you start tallying numbers, because Ramirez killed 14 people, and he was up to 11, is what they reference. And then you have the lady at the hotel, the person he shoots, and the last slashing victim. That gets you to 14. So I was like, he's gonna turn him in. And he doesn't turn him in, he turns him over to the people, which is also what happened in real life. A mob of people with metal pipes chased Ramirez and caught him and turned him into the police. And that's what happens here. He comes out, there's a mob of people, they got metal pipes, he's running. I guess you can't say that they all have metal pipes, but he's trying to run away from them and gets cornered, and a dude knocks him out, almost knocks him out cold with a pipe. And what's great is when he starts to run, it flips back into Paranoid, which is exactly what he should be feeling. And then right as he gets hit and is on the ground getting beat up, it goes back to Can't Fight This Feeling as Mr. Jingles pulls up and kind of looks him down. And you just kind of sit there and I'm like, what a clever open to the episode. Because one, the way they play with the songs and the characters, but two, the way they were using the factual stuff about the Night Stalker. How many kills he had, the year that it was all going down in Los Angeles, how he's caught with a mob of people. It was such a clever cold open. Why don't you see as the cleverness hits my face? Dude, I love the back and forth with the music right there. Black Sabbath, Paranoid, which you think Ramirez would be of Mr. Jingles. Mr. Jingles, I can't fight this feeling anymore, and he gets a freaking newspaper with his face on. He's gonna turn him in. Or turn him over to the people. Let the people catch him. Oh, that's so clever. Yeah. Oh, man. Oh, nice. They go back to Black Sabbath for him running. That's brilliant. Oh! Run! So I bet you the hotel woman was 12, and the shot was 13, the kniving was 14. So here he gets caught, so he's not going to get away. I gotta see if this is how he actually got caught. Oh! I can't fuck this feeling. Yeah. Jingles going by him. I don't know where we're going this episode, but that was a brilliant opening. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was a mob of people armed with steel rods. Alright, so yeah, that's all accurate. 85, so yeah, I bet you the hotel lady was 12, the gunshot was 13, that stabbing victim was 14, and a mob catches him. That's awesome. Using real life historical facts inside the episode with Ramirez. It's smart. If you're gonna use a real character, got to use the real story to a degree. So that's cool. All right. I was like, good for you, man. You just closed the door nice on those two characters. But obviously, we're not going to really close the door on those two characters. And when we come back, we do another time jump. We now jump to 1989, and apparently we are now in the middle of AHS 1989. That's where everything's kind of settling down, and we kind of open up coming back from the commercial with a photographer, this guy who's on like a trip up the coast or whatever. He's like following birds with his girlfriend, something like that. He's taking pictures, and they come across the camp, so he's just kind of walking around because there's a waterfall or something that's like connected into that area. And that's where he stumbles on Montana, who just chews the heck out of the scenery, man. She's sunbathing and like just flips that on where he's like, I have a girlfriend. And within the next two lines that come out of her mouth, he's completely forgotten he's got a girlfriend. And right as the innuendos, the writing's so clever, man. Like, he's just like, ooh, what's this? And like aiming toward his package, and he's like, that's my fanny pack. She's like, can I unzip it? And then from there gets him. She's like, you want to stick it in? And he's like, yes. And she's like, well, me first. And she stabs him. Hey, just watch me watch it.
You want to stick it in me, birthday boy?
Yes. Oh man. Oh, poor guy just wanted to take some pictures of birds. And right there that we kind of dive into the heart of what's going on with these guys. Everyone is indeed a ghost that dies at Camp Redwood, and we know this because for the first time outside of the hippie that kept popping up, we see all of what they call the old timers from back in the 70s, and they kind of make a comment as they watch Montana kill that guy, like, isn't this just like too much? Like, aren't you guys having enough of this? Like, we haven't touched a single human since the 70s, and these guys are just killing people all willy-nilly. And what's fun is you kind of get to see Xavier, who's probably one of the worst mental states out of everybody before he gets murdered. And same thing with Montana, so consumed with the revenge and stuff. Here you get to see the two of them both having fun with the fact that they're dead and they can interact with real people. I think Xavier shows up and is like, like, the next one's mine, babe, like, good job type of stuff. And, Ray pops up along with the other old timers, is just like, I'm not cleaning up. You guys are leaving dead bodies rotting on like like on the dock. Like, I'm tired of cleaning up your messes. But once we kind of establish what's going on at the camp, we got to find out what everybody else is up to in 1989. And we jump to Margaret in like just one of the most gratuitous, flashy kind of ways. And we open up with lifestyles of the rich and famous. And you're kind of following along with what happened to Margaret. And you literally get the verbal telling of the exposition where she survived all these crazy massacres and then created this business where she would set up experiences in real life locations from different murderers to like let you sleep in the house where Wayne Gacy was one night, or stay at the cabins where all these massacres happen. And she's now become like very successful and even more rich than just off of the money she got from her husband, but now from this business. And what's even crazier is we see Trevor. And it's funny because at the end of last week, someone mentioned that Chet, we didn't see Chet in the preview when we saw Ray and Xavier and Montana. And then obviously we also saw all three of them at the end of the episode. And I was like, yeah. But we also didn't see Trevor. we didn't see Trevor because Trevor did not die. Apparently, when Margaret stabbed him to death, she missed his heart. And turns out that he's been in a coma the whole time. And when he comes to, Margaret's sitting right there. It's like, oh my gosh, I've been praying so much. And he's like, why are you, we didn't even have that close, we didn't really even know each other that well. And they're kind of talking, and you know that Trevor's gonna call her out. And certainly he does. He's like, I know it was you. And she's like, okay, when are the cops getting here? He's like, I don't, like, that means a trial and all these things. I don't want that. And basically is gonna blackmail her. And she somehow flips the blackmail on him to marry her, essentially because then he wouldn't be able to testify against her ever if there was some sort of a charge brought up against her. So, like, Trevor comes up with this super, super smart plan and is really, like, for a guy who's in a coma, had a really smart, like, go, at what to do to blackmail Margaret because he remembers everything. But then she somehow flips it on him to be married with him, and they kind of get into this argument, and you can see why this relationship seems to work. Because as they start to argue, and he's like, "You're terrible," or whatever, then they start to like go at it. And right as they're getting like, she's making comments about him, and then things are going on, and who pops in but Leslie Jordan? Oh man, I love when this guy pops in, and he's basically Margaret's assistant. He comes in to let Margaret know that Brooke lost her final appeal and wasn't fighting it anymore and was getting pushed to death row. And while she's there, we kind of cut to her being led into death row. And who does she walk past in the jail? But the Night Stalker. And you're like, oh, now I see what's going on. We've now jumped to 1989. Homeboy's been in prison since he was caught back in 85. And you're like, oh, this is interesting. I wonder how they're going to play with this. And it's interesting to see the way Brooke is approaching things. Like, obviously, she fought, she lost. And now she's just, like, kind of accepted her fate and is silent, won't kind of give anybody anything. And, like, the Night Stalker's trying to be like, I could save you or whatever. Like, I like your style. And, she's talking about Montana, and she says a line where she's like, I gutted her, and now she's in hell licking Satan's balls. Night Stalker, it was one of the funniest moments of the episode. Night Stalker's like, she'd be so lucky. It's just little things like that, man, is what I'm digging about this episode and about this season. And from finding out what's going on at Death Row and the fact that they're both there, we jump back to Xavier in Montana, and we see Ray show up. And this is where Ray kind of complains about like what they've been doing, like you're just leaving people all willy-nilly because the boyfriend's still on the dock. And all of a sudden, the girlfriend, I believe, of the guy shows up and is like trying to find something, and Ray she's looking for her boyfriend, and Ray starts talking to her, and he's like, I saw your newspaper, Brooke was my friend, and she's like, a killer? He's like, no, and like as he's going into like, clearly, since he can't leave, trying to figure out some way to help Brooke, and the next thing you know, the old C-Man got surprised, check it out! Oh, dude. I love. I'm done cleaning up after you assholes. I love it. I love it. Boom, right, like boom, man! Like Xavier out of like they've done this really, really well all season 2. It's one of those classic slasher moves where it's like, yeah, a lot of times the kills are telegraphed. But every once in a while, you're like in the middle of a scene or in the middle of a moment, and out of nowhere it comes. And sure enough, I mean, you had to know she was gonna get it probably eventually. But in the line that she's delivering, you're not seeing it coming, and Xavier gets her, and you're just like. They basically kind of talk about how much they are loving being dead. Like, life was screwing us over, but we are, like, kings right now. And Ray's like, you guys are terrible. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. After that death, he's just like, I'm done. I'm done cleaning up your messes. And we go, to break, and we come back. And before we jump in to what the repercussions are of Ray not cleaning everything up we jump back into prison with Brooke, who's now trying to sleep, and they do this like real nice thing. It's like messed up and something that wouldn't shock me, maybe came from somewhere inspiration wise, but like Brooke is just kind of trying to accept like whatever, and she's tossed and turned. She looks up, and it's just like like your final resting place, or like this is your home or something like that. Just one of these things where it's like you are going to die here. This is it. It's the end of the road for you. And while she's inside and she just dealing with it, all of a sudden she starts to hear the Night Stalker. And he's using his satanic powers to essentially talk to her, without physically being there. And he even can make himself appear at one point. But he basically says, look, you got a lot of potential, girly. Like, for someone who didn't do all of those murders, and you're just like, there's something about you, like, Mr. Satan would be interested. And she's just like, screw you, I'm not joining. And she ends up back alone in the cell, like can't see him anymore. He's got the full-on black eyes, man. So like anytime he's kind of doing some sort of dark magic, I guess it would be, that's allowing him to communicate these powers that Satan is bestowing upon him. So after Brooke says no again, we find out from Courtney, good old Leslie Jordan, that Margaret's business is struggling. They've had 3 deals fall through, and things are getting pretty bad, and they're kind of having this like, oh no, like he's like, we should sell the company. She's like, no, I won't do any of that. Who walks in to save the day but Trevor? And sure enough, Ray not cleaning up the messes, someone found the dead body, and all of a sudden there's all this press at Camp Redwood again. And I love that Courtney's first thing is, do we still own that? That means we're liable. Yet Margaret immediately is like, oh, we can turn this into a thing. It immediately sparks this idea for her to like, oh, no, this isn't a bad thing. Courtney, we're going to use this. Like, Trevor, you are the best type of deal. And then we jump to Alaska, of all places, to find out that Mr. Jingles has gone straight. After leaving Night Stalker in Hollywood to get caught by the mob, you find out that in the time, that's the 4 years that have passed or whatever it is, he's moved to Alaska. He's married a former prostitute who knows that he was a murderer. It's like, look, we got to leave our past be our past. What you are now is wonderful. And they have a baby. And he works at Video Shack, which is essentially Blockbuster. He's up for a promotion to be a manager of the store. So he's doing this really good work. And then we get to see him at his place of work doing this stuff. And he mentions the line to his coworker. The guy's like looking at tapes. Man, I hate when people. So for those who don't know, back in the day, like, now we have discs or you just download stuff to watch it. Back in the day, home video was like an actual video cassette. You'd put it in a VCR, you have to rewind it, and if you played it, it didn't automatically rewind. And like every rental shop anywhere, and there were video rental places. You go to rent a movie in a physical location rather than just renting it on like Amazon. In case you didn't know. And but the big thing for all those rental shops was Be Kind, Rewind. There's been a movie made about it with Jack Black and Mos Def. But it is a common phrase for video stores back in the day. It was Be Kind, Rewind, because you hate, if you get it and it's not rewound, well, then you got to rewind it in the store. Or if you forget to rewind it and then someone gets it, it was a pain to have to rewind things. It wasn't a one click. It was like you'd hit it and then you'd wait for like 5-10 minutes while the whole thing would rewind. But he says it to the coworker and you're just like, oh man, that's a nice pull. And the coworker's like, that's genius. That should be like a slogan for something. You're like, we just gave Mr. Jingles credit for the slogan, Be Kind, Rewind. For someone who grew up with video cassettes, that made me laugh. good bit. I mean, why don't you check it out?
Be Kind, Rewind.
That's cool. We should put that on a sign.
It's the little things about this show, man. But we come out of that and we go back to find out that Margaret is going to take Camp Redwood and use this opportunity to like baptize it. I'm so tied to here and all these terrible tragedies happen. I want to baptize it with the waters of this bottomless lake. And then I'm going to hold this big music festival during Halloween weekend. You know, the reporters there, and one guy's like, oh, are you going to have like scares and surprises? Like, there'll be plenty. And, you know, being a smart businesswoman, she's like, make sure you go and get your ticket because 80% of the tickets are gone after our secret pre-sale, wink, wink, which didn't happen. There was no secret pre-sale. But she's essentially going to turn another tragedy at Camp Redwood into a business opportunity for her. And at this point, we finally confirm that poor Chet did indeed drown, as you see him standing watching. And he goes to make a move, and Montana grabs him and is like, whoa, hold. He's like, and it was so interesting because it's one of those things like you never really get to hear anyone talk about. Because like if you drown, that's it, you're done. But when you have the ghost of someone who drowns, Chet goes in at Montana when she's trying to stop him and is like, no, you don't understand. Have you ever had your lungs on fire so bad, ready to gasp because you need air, and then all you can breathe is water? He's like, Margaret has to die. And, you know, Montana's like, chill. She'll get hers, but, like, now is not the time. And then we go back again to Alaska, where he's watching the news with his wife on the couch, and you're seeing all the stuff from Redwood, and she's like, are you okay? He's like, you know what? I'm free of that place. Completely free. And you can see there's like some dread or nerve. In the moment, I was like, yeah, you're saying you're free, but you know you're going to go back. And that's not what happens. He is indeed actually free. Has no reaction or emotion to it, which isn't, I don't think that's entirely true. You can definitely see a little bit, like, it still is back there because, like, he was an innocent man. But he truly is done. Doesn't feel any need to think about Camp Redwood. And when we come back from that break, we're now with another, this is just a classic serial killer thing, but serial killers all have groupies. So, you know, Night Stalker's in prison and waiting for a girl, and you can tell she's a groupie because, like, before she sits down, she's like, oh, yeah, and she's, like, flashing, you know, her cleavage and stuff. You're like, oh, this is one of them crazy girls who like serial killers, which was a massive thing when any of these serial killers were being arrested back then. You know, but she basically is like, I found out something for you. Like, this is a good piece of info. After he kind of tells her that Brooke said no, and he's like, it's unfortunate because she's got potential. She's like, I found this, and I thought this would be interesting to you. And she's got the flyer for Margaret's Camp Redwood, you know, music festival. And who's headlining the festival? Freaking Billy Idol. And you know that immediately just kind of gets Night Stalker going. You get this really cool moment where he starts looking at like the other names. He's like, look at all these other names, man. They're all one hit wonders, and you know, come a year from now, nobody will be talking about them. And he's like me, like the 80s belong to us. That's our decade, and we're at the end of the decade, and the door's gonna close, and we'll be forgotten. And he's like, I don't want to be forgotten. I want to be like Billy Idol. I want to live on through multiple generations. So you immediately know Homeboy is gonna get out of prison and go back to Camp Redwood. And you're already starting to see all the dominoes are lining up that all the characters are gonna come back to Camp Redwood again, just like a perfect slasher sequel. The question is, how are we gonna get everybody there? And we get to see most of those answers. You know, so we go from, you know, him talking to who he calls Red, the girl with red hair, to Brooke, whose time has arrived. And now she's, after being walked in and kind of telling Night Stalker to F off, she's being walked out. And he's like, this is it, man. I can save you. Last chance. And as she walks by, she just kind of flips him the bird behind her back. Such a subtle, wonderful thing. I really loved what they've given Emma Roberts this year because it's been a different role for her. But it's building and setting itself up to return to that kind of sassy HBIC that we all know and love from Emma Roberts when she's, you know, acting. And her character seems to be going that way, maybe. But what we see is, like, you know, she's kind of walking out. And I love every time she walks in or out down this, the way they frame the shot where you can see the window into Night Stalker's cell and his face is just there. It almost looks like it's like superimposed in, but you can tell that it's not. But every time it happened, I was just like, that looks good. I like it. It was a nice shot. But, you kind of see her flip him off, and then you go inside his cell. He's cut his hand open, and he's got a pentagram on the ground, and the redwood flyer is in the middle, and he's doing some sort of creepy ritual. And, it starts to kind of light on fire, and they sync all this up in time with what's happening to Brooke, who, the Night Stalker, when he visited her in that kind of, telepathic vision, trying to convince her to join Satan, he said, it's like, you're getting the worst, man. It's like the medical way. We'll shoot you with the drugs and put you to sleep and kill you in a real quiet way. He's like, that's what you think. First it's paralytic, and then it's like something that's gonna kind of knock you out, basically, because they don't want to see you react or suffer. But when they put the last batch in, which I think is hydrochloride or something like that, he's like, it burns through your veins all the way to your heart, stopping. And you're just like, oh man, way to put that into if you're gonna try to convince someone to join Satan, that's the hard sell. And Brooke was still like, no, whatever. And when she gets in, we're kind of syncing up with what's going on with him and her. She gets in, and it's like, you have any last words? And she's like, I know you're there, Margaret, and I'm innocent. I was always innocent. I never did anything wrong. You're gonna burn in hell for just wanting to be here to watch me. You will get yours one day, type of bit. And she's kind of going down. They're starting to inject her with all the injections. We're watching this thing, ritual thing that Night Stalker's doing, and the flyer's starting to burn, and this black smoke starts to form. And then you see one of the guards, in the bathroom, in the stall, and the smoke's coming out of one of the vents, and eventually takes him over. He goes all black-eyed, and you're like, oh, here we go. This is how Night Stalker's gonna get out. But he's not gonna go after Brooke, because she told him to F off 3 times. So you're like, how is Brooke getting out of this? Sure enough, Brooke goes down. Brooke dies. They put, the sheet over her head, and you're like, oh, man. In the moment, you're like, oh. But I was like, nah, man, there's got to be more to this. But in the meantime, we watch what the Night Stalker does, and sure enough, the guy with the black eyes comes in, escorts him out. Then we, kind of wrap up there, and you're basically right at the end of the episode, so you're only coming back for this real little tiny short bit. And the beginning kind of gave you some nice shocks, the end ends so strong. This is what made the episode really good, and what I thought a solid 100th episode, in the fact that the end was jam-packed with surprises, and sort of surprises, right? We pick up in the last seg with Mr. Jingles coming home, and he's talking about work or whatever. And he's basically he was trying to get his hands on Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and he's kind of telling that story, but no one's answering. You're like, oh no, he didn't. How would he know that he was in Alaska? And you're like, did Night Stalker do something to his wife and kid? And sure enough, when he goes in, well, I mean, you can see the Seaman's reaction.
She's not alive. Oh no, that's a lot of blood. Oh.
Yeah, blood everywhere, man. It was bad. But it's just the wife. And you're like, what's going on? He opens the door and you start hearing a baby crying. You're like, okay. Even the Night Stalker's got a few lines that he won't cross. He's not going to kill a baby, apparently, which, give him that, I suppose. Bad dude. One positive thing, he didn't kill the baby, but he leaves a note there for Mr. Jingles that, basically says, Satan will get his revenge type deal. He's going to come for him. And right then, you're like, oh, there we go, man. Now you see how everyone's going to get back there. And Mr. Jingles sets the baby outside of a door, rings the doorbell, comes out, turns out it's his wife's sister, and she sees him out there, and she's like, where's my, where's whatever his wife's name is? She's like, dead. And I have to go. And she's like, why are you leaving him here? If you love the kids, he goes, when Bobby's of age, tell him how I loved him more than anything. She's like, you love him, why are you leaving? He's like, to protect him. The minute I heard that, I was like, Bobby. Who is Bobby? This is 1989. That means come 2011, when the show started, he'd be in his 20s. He could be any number of characters. I'm immediately trying to rack my brain. I'm like, there's no I can't remember a Bobby. The only Bob that comes up is Bob Thompson from Cult, who is a reporter, and that doesn't feel right. But I don't know. Somehow I think Mr. Jingles' baby is somehow gonna tie in to the overall AHS world. I think it'd be interesting to see it go that route. But now Jingles is on his way back to Camp Redwood, The ghosts are obviously there. Margaret's there. Night Stalker is out. There's only one person missing now. Brooke is not there. Brooke's dead. Now, the whole time Brooke's getting put down, there's like an executioner. And I say executioner because it's the one that's executing the death, but also like is wearing this mask. And I sat there, I was like, is that a thing from the 80s? Like when we would do like the medical injection by, death by injection stuff, did they wear like over the, like it was weird. And we come back to like Brooke's body is in the morgue and you see the sheet pull off and then that person starts messing with needles and stuff. And you're like, okay, this person clearly didn't kill her and is going to wake her up. I'm sitting there, I'm like, who is this person? Sure enough, that's what happened. Brooke comes up and was not killed. So now Brooke's back in play. But you're like, I'm like, who is it? It looks like a woman. It doesn't look like a guy. And as I'm trying to think it, the mask comes off and this happens. Oh, Donna. Why is Donna back? What? I don't even know. What motive does Donna have to not kill Brooke? I was so mad at myself for not putting that together. I was like, who's the only person that we haven't seen that we need back in the fold to have the whole cast back at Camp Redwood? Donna. The psychiatrist, doctor who's obsessed with serial killers, even obsessed with one who isn't a serial... Two, I guess now two, right? Mr. Jingles wasn't a serial killer, now neither is Brooke. She breaks Brooke out essentially and is like, we gotta go back to Camp Redwood, and is clearly doing more like experimentation research type stuff. And what we see in the previews for next week, is she's kind of pushing Brooke to be bad. And Brooke, I think the one thing she said in the previews for next week was like, just because you spend one day in the sun doesn't mean you can get rid of all the ugliness behind you. And she only killed, of all the people that are doing killing, Brooke didn't do too bad. But Donna's the one that's going to pull her out, and Donna's going to bring her back to Camp Redwood. And very much like a sequel, the whole gang's all back together at Camp Redwood next week. I'm pumped to see where we go. I was shocked to see that like we're going to see everybody at Camp Redwood next week, and things are going down. So maybe it could be 1 or 2 episodes before people start making moves on Margaret. Or they could stretch it out. I mean, they stretched one night out into 5 episodes. But I like the approach of setting something up this way. Rather than making a hard pivot and completely changing the story, which we've seen Horror Story do a few times, it's a small pivot that's staying within the story that they've built and is cementing the fact that the story we're watching is happening. All of these things are happening. This isn't some movie that's being made. It's no trick. It is straightforward. It is what I think we are seeing what we are seeing. It's just what elements is Murphy laying in there that could be tying us to other places, like the way the ghosts are trapped. Is Mr. Jingles' kid potentially a character in the future? These are things that are kind of starting to formulate while we're getting a really traditional slasher take to this season. And I like that, like, we kind of had a movie. Now we're kind of in that movie sequel. Depending on where the sequel gets to, maybe they'll pull the trilogy card and have one more pivot that kind of gives us a third story within the bigger story. So far for me, and especially after an okay episode last week, I think AHS 1984 is on good tracks, man. I like where we're going and what we're setting up, and hopefully there should be a lot of fun for this Halloween music festival at Camp Redwood. But there you go, man. Those were all the Seaman spoiler-filled thoughts and everything that went on tonight in American Horror Story 1984. Question is, man, what are you thinking? Like I said, AHS 84 so far has been, pretty good. And now we got to that pivot episode and we didn't pivot out into anything crazy. So do you like where we're going? Do you like what the pivot was? Do you like this new part of the story that we're setting up? Does it feel like a sequel almost? Anything you're thinking about the episode, man? What was your favorite kill? What character were you most excited to see brought back that we thought we might not see again? What was the biggest shock to you? I mean, obviously, you want to talk about shocks. Look at what I did, because I didn't show it to you yet, when Trevor appeared.
Behind every successful magnate is a devoted spouse.
The doctor said the knife missed my heart by millimeters.
So What was your big surprise or shock of the night? What do you think is coming? Where are we going? What could end up happening? And is this something that's tying in to different things in American Horror Story? Everything you're thinking goes down below in the comments. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out, man, you want to see all of what we're following AHS every week, you want to hang out, pick up, go back, watch the ones that you haven't seen me talk about, see everything we're talking about as we go forward. Best way to do that, go hit that subscribe button and hit that little bell that follows so you get alerts. So when I drop my AHS stuff real late at night on the East Coast, bright and early on the West Coast, or first thing when you wake up on Thursday morning, you'll have the alert and know where that is. And if you're a fan of just movies, TV, anything in the entertainment world in general, I'm your guy, man. I'm going to talk about all of it. So if you want to hang out, have some fun, join the Cinema Sitdown squad, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, get the alerts, be in the know. You do that, I keep bringing the content, and hopefully we'll just be keeping on, and having a good old time here at the Seaman's Cinema Sitdown. For the Seaman's Cinema Sitdown, I am the Seaman, and I'm signing off. Peace. Well, I'll be. You guys are still here. You must be looking for some more content. Well, don't worry. Seaman's got you covered, man. You got videos like this guy and this guy. And if you haven't yet, and you want to come check out all the Seaman goodies, join the Cinema Sitdown squad, man. Hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the little bell down below that, too, so you can get alerts every time I make new videos.